power are the extremists when it comes to individual liberty. The Libertarian Party is calling themselves, over the years, the party of principle. But the Libertarian Party is also the party of individual human rights. The classical liberals who defined the traditions of free minds, free markets, and self-government were libertarians. I have a friend who said something I thought was quite relevant too. He said, if you think about it, being a libertarian merely means being a good neighbor. So everything that's involved with good neighborish activity is really what a libertarian is. The only thing libertarians have in common, however, is the belief that they have the right to have nothing in common. Libertarianism, or a libertarian, is one who opposed government tyranny in the 60s as well as the 90s and 2000s. There's an inconsistency about some people that I used to hang with back in the 70s. Unlike the liberals, who seem to think that you are incompetent and immoral when engaged in business, and unlike today's conservatives, who think that you're incompetent and immoral when engaged in private affairs, libertarians have great respect for the competence and good moral sense of their fellow Americans. After all, who knows better than you what is good for you? In fact, conservatives and Republicans generally want to be your father. Think about that. And the liberals and Democrats generally want to be your mother. Libertarians just want to let you be adults and leave you alone unless you ask for help. The foundation of libertarianism is simply the individual commitment to conduct all human action and/or individual relationships, no matter what they should be, solely on the basis of mutual consent of all involved. My friend Carl Hess shared that with me years ago. Defining a libertarian as being on the right is like calling a nectarine a peach or a bus a truck. People always do that. And I'm saying, time out. What you mean they're on the right? First of all, the right and left is a whole myth. And secondly, libertarians are on the right and the left. That's what's the beauty of individual liberty and individual responsibility. One of the great lines I came up with a few years ago, somebody says to me, Boddie, what's the difference between a libertarian and a conservative? Without even thinking, I said, dope and tolerance. And truly, that may be the defining difference. So once again, 5 things: self-ownership, self-defense, taxation is theft, we believe, honest money, and possession of anything should never be a crime. I saw this in the paper a few years ago. I thought it was quite apropos. It was in the Orange County Register. It said a reader writes that a job description for most modern legislators could fit on a business card as follows: if it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. And if it votes, pork it. That's typical of what we see with politicians in this day and age, people calling themselves Republicans and Democrats. The Libertarian Party is the unparty. The Libertarian Party's founders were unpoliticians. We don't play the game the same way as the R's and D's do. I'm always reminded, too, that a person that doesn't stand for something will always fall for anything, and that's what too many people are doing in this day and age. Libertarians are a unique bunch. It's both a philosophy and a political party, and you can register as a libertarian, or you can be active as a libertarian without being a member of a libertarian party. All of the above. Many choices, but one fundamental underlying principle of this ideal is self-ownership and the non-initiation of force. Have you ever stopped to think, have you ever really stopped to think that the lesser of two evils, which most people will throw out there when it comes election time, and recently in the election of the Terminator, the lesser of two evils is evil? Maybe our government educational system is so unsound and so incredibly bad that people have forgotten how to think even basically, logically. And they will proudly say, well, I voted for the lesser of two evils, and then wonder why we have the problems in our society that we do today. Libertarian is not some variant of liberalism or conservatism. It is not a combination of left or right positions. Libertarianism does not fit in the traditional political spectrum. That spectrum does not admit the idea that all people have the right to control their own lives, in all respects, and the obligation to take responsibility for themselves and their own actions. So responsibility and ownership. The R's and D's don't look at that. Liberals and conservatives agree that the rest of us are evil or incompetent or both, and that must therefore be controlled by government. Libertarians don't believe that. They differ only on which aspect of our lives should be controlled, whether it's in the boardroom or in the bedroom. By contrast, libertarians hold that each person has the absolute right of self-ownership over his or her life, body, speech, action, and honestly acquired property. Each has the obligation to respect those same rights in each other person. The proper way for people to deal with each other is by mutual respect for each other's rights and self-ownership. Anything that is peaceful, voluntary, and honest, that violates no rights, and thus is not the proper subject of governmental intervention. But government is involved with almost everything we do in our life today. As a libertarian, I don't accept that. Law enforcement's only proper function is to assist in defending our rights. The only proper laws are those which penalize such conduct as murder, rape, kidnapping, robbery, burglary, arson, trespass, pollution, fraud. On an international scale, the United States Armed Forces should be confined to providing security against foreign attacks on American shores. They should not be used in foreign wars, as we sometimes have caught ourselves up in. Libertarianism is the philosophy of the Declaration of Independence and the American Revolution. Most people, most of the time, deal with each other in a libertarian basis of mutual respect. Two groups don't. Criminals don't, and the government doesn't. Libertarians challenge the notion that the government can legitimately coerce the rest of us through taxation, regulation, conscription, and the criminal penalties imposed upon peaceful voluntary conduct. We demand that the laws be limited to their proper function, that government personnel be held to the same standard of respect for the rights that the rest of us follow. The Libertarian Party is for all people who do not want to be controlled and who do not want to control others. We were taught, as a child I was, Richard, behave yourself. That's what my mom taught me. Most people who are involved in politics who are not libertarians somehow believe, and maybe their folks taught them, that they must control others. That's not what we believe. On all issues, we will support increased personal liberty and reduce government control. We know that a free society is possible and that it is practical. We are committed to work for as long as it takes to achieve that. And we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal. That's from the Declaration of Independence. In case you have never read that, go find it. You can get it anywhere. Read the Declaration of Independence, and you will read in that first half